providing swift disaster relief, sometimes providing, it was like 3 days in a row, 1 million pounds of food per day over those 3 days in the early response. And while at the Houston Food Bank, Stan was, he was in charge of and led the coordinating and remodel of their distribution center. And they only shut down operations for 1 week while they did that. And that's a big deal. It was a 308,000 square foot warehouse. And that allowed that food bank to triple its output. I think these two things are important to call out about Stan's history, because what we've been doing at Second Harvest is similar. We've had to double our output. We're serving the twice amount of food into the community. It's costing us twice as much. Right now, we're serving about 450,000 people on average every month. At the height of the pandemic, we were serving over 600,000. So yeah, it's dropped some, but families are really still struggling here in Silicon Valley. We talk about this a lot in, we use this economic term called a K-shaped recovery. Some folks, are seeing a recovery. They're moving up on that chart of, they saved some money. They're, finding life a little easier because they don't have to go into work. They haven't had to have as many expenses. And other folks, many of them are clients, are not seeing any sort of recovery. In fact, they're having more hardships because of the past 18 months. They have exhausted their resources. They have spent their savings, if they had any to begin with. And many more people have relied on Second Harvest for access to nutritious groceries than ever before. So it's two worlds. There's a huge economic divide here in Silicon Valley, and that has come alive in many ways here, of course, in the number of clients we see, and then how we actually get that food out into the community. And so we're gonna talk a little bit about that today. Stan, can you, let's start with some numbers. Can you give us an overview of what changed? How many trucks do we have now? How many pounds of food are we distributing? I don't know, give us a little overview.
Okay, sure. Right now we have 36 trucks. We started before COVID with 22. So you can see that that's grown. We did 144 million pounds of food distributed last year. As Cat said, that was a little more than double. Mm-hmm. We're still doing 10 to 11 million pounds a month to the community. It's down a little bit, but 10 to 11 million pounds of food is a lot of food in a month. We take in about 80 tractor trailer loads of food per week off. These are from national organizations, government, wherever we're getting food. We bring about 80 a week. We deliver 80 times a day. Our trucks are going in and out. So as those of you who were on earlier, when Kat and I were talking about parking, that's part of the parking problem, is someplace to park 36 trucks and go to the docks, load them up, and then park the trailers and try to hook them up and do all those things. So we operate basically 20 hours a day, and sometimes 24, depending on how the night goes. We are currently operating out of 4 different warehouses. Each warehouse does something slightly different, and a lot of the times we're just delivering to ourselves back and forth so that we can match the loads up to go out the next day. So very quickly, that's kind of a quick overview of what we're doing. And this goes on every day.
It's pretty incredible. I mean, I think about how Second Harvest, even pre-pandemic, we were serving 250,000 people a month. So that there was a crisis then. But like you said, it was half as much poundage going out the door. And we were able to do that, from the warehouses we have. We have this 4th warehouse. How long have we had that 4th warehouse?
A little over a year now.
And prior, again, this flip of the switch in operations, when the pandemic started, we used to have our operations would support kind of farmers market style distributions where, clients would, they would park maybe on the street or in a parking lot. They'd get out, they'd wait in line, or maybe that was more of a true farmer's market style where they could kind of mingle and walk around, choose the food they wanted. But that had to change as well. Can you talk a little bit about what went into that change and why we had to do it?
Sure. Well, obviously during COVID, we could not handle the farmer's market style product. We didn't even know in those early days of COVID how it was spread. And so we did drive-throughs so that people could drive through, and we would put boxes into their cars. So we developed a plan to have a box of produce, a box of dairy, a box of dry groceries, and a box of frozen protein or meat. And so each family would get 4 boxes basically. Obviously, some people would come through with multiple families in a car. They had their kids piled in, and they were a little bit anonymous. I think that helped them. Those people who were new to food bank distributions. We sometimes would have 1,000, 1,500 cars those first few months going through these distributions. So we would get the truck. We'd load the trucks at night. Our National Guard folks and the Conservation Corps would load the boxes during the day. We'd put them on pallets and get them to sites the next day. It was a one-day turnaround.
Yeah, that's incredible. You mentioned these boxes, and you mentioned the National Guard. You know, at the start of the pandemic, so much changed. We lost like all of our corporate volunteers, which was a huge source of kind of human resources. And it wasn't too many weeks in that we did get the support of the National Guard and the California Conservation Corps. We still have some of those folks helping us out, right?
Absolutely. Conservation Corps, and there are a few National Guardsmen still here. They're over at the new Brennan warehouse. That's that 100,000 square foot warehouse that we moved into overnight, basically. And so they're helping us currently build boxes over there. To go just to the boxing, that was just a new form of distribution. So I can tell you that the first day we decided we were going to have to do drive-throughs. There was no other way to do them. Yeah. And I had done drive-throughs during Harvey in Houston. And so it is a very quick, fast way to distribute lots of food very quickly. And, you know, that's what we had to do. We had to move product really fast and really quick because we didn't have enough truck drivers, didn't have enough people. National Guard was helping us drive trucks. So, you know, it was, those first few weeks were a little harder than it became later on.
Yeah, I remember we just didn't know, like, oh, having people spaced out and stuff like that. We just didn't have enough room. Once you spaced people out, our volunteers out, there wasn't enough room to make the food get out the door. All that production was limited. So we had to go get a whole another warehouse. Brennan, just as an aside, we just opened up Brennan for volunteer opportunities. So if any of you listeners or viewers have volunteered at our Cypress location or any of our distribution sites, I highly encourage you to visit our Brennan warehouse. It's named that because it's on Brennan Street. We're very clever. But you can sign up to volunteer on our website. Stan, I think there's a lot of talk right now about food, like food access. And we have stayed committed and stuck pretty much to our commitment of distributing 50% fresh produce throughout this. But can you talk a little bit about the supply chain? I feel like it's in the news every day. You and I were talking about cardboard boxes last week. Just how is it coming alive for Second Harvest?
Well, obviously it's different than the first of COVID, where we completely disrupted the supply chain because there wasn't people to get the product to us. Now it's more of a case of a true scarcity, and part of it is, you know, just like we ran into last month, where we couldn't get boxes all of a sudden. trucks were 2 months late delivering boxes to us. We finally found a corrugator in Watsonville, so we're pulling boxes from that source, trying to eliminate the middle person for distribution. So and costs have gone up, and of course everybody knows that the container ships are out in the bays on both coasts, and that's, you know, I expect that to be backed up in the supply chain till probably the second quarter of next year. So I don't think that's going away anytime soon, because there is this huge driver shortage. I saw news that there were 150,000 drivers short in the United States. That's a lot of drivers.
And it was supposed to, I mean, this is like, just for all of you to know, this is a thing I really geek out on. I think that freight and supply chain logistics are fascinating, but there was going to be a shortage prior to COVID. Like, we were forecasting a driver shortage years ago, and now it's even worse. What was it? I think you were sharing, one of our food sourcing team members was sharing how just not so much the cost of the can of tuna, but the freight to get it here was 400 times the normal cost, right? So we're seeing it in some of our food that we purchase as well. Yeah,
we were bringing tuna in from Asia, and it was on a container, and the cost had risen just in freight 400% one load to the next. We were looking at loads of chicken today. We have 29 loads of chicken coming to us over the next 2 months because there's a shortage of turkeys.
Yeah.
So everything has some shortage attached. And so now we've had to find chicken to replace turkeys. And so we have, like I said, we have 29 loads of chicken coming. And of course, having someplace to put 29 loads of chicken until it's needed, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. But
well, you know, honestly, the chicken thing is an interesting thing, because a lot of our, I'm holding the dry erase marker like I'm going to start drawing our answers here. But a lot of our clients, you know, live in smaller homes, or they rent, you know, a room in an apartment, or they are living in an RV, or maybe even renting a room that doesn't have a full kitchen. And so what I've learned since working here is a lot of our clients actually prefer chickens at the holidays because they fit in their smaller ovens. And so in a way that's kind of okay. But it is interesting that, you know, that's how it comes alive for us. We're still able to source the food, it sounds like, but it looks like it's a little bit different. I want to ask you just one more thing about, you know, this time frame has been so, I mean, everything has changed. It was just a matter of weeks that we had to double our output. We had to find a new workforce. We had to get another warehouse. You know, we've had to hire people so quickly to ensure that we're getting groceries out to our community. What is something that you learned through this that you didn't expect?
You know, I expected the worst anyway. So
Hurricane Harvey probably taught you a lot, huh?
You know, operations people, we always expect the worst, and then we're always happy that it didn't happen. So, you know, I really think that it was the biggest eye opener for me was how the community banded together and supported us. I had never really seen that before, and you know, as the group that spends the money, I mean, you find it for us, we spend it. We're buying product and putting fuel in the trucks and doing all those kinds of things. And we could never have accomplished it had we not had the community support we had. We just couldn't have done it.
Yeah, it's been absolutely incredible. This
gratifying.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Well, I want to pause here. We got a couple questions I wanted to take from our attendees. Thanks so much for the kind of that high level overview. I feel like we could talk about this all day because it's fascinating. But one of our attendees, and folks, feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. We can answer them live. And if there's too many, we'll type them up and answer them for you. But one of the questions was from one of the attendees about the K-shaped recovery. And I just want to explain that a little bit more clearly. Basically, you know, the pandemic exacerbated longstanding inequality that was here in Silicon Valley. We knew this was happening before. We refer to a K-shaped recovery because the K represents the different experiences within our community. So the upward stroke of the K are, you know, those folks that could work from home during shelter in place. They benefited from, you know, stock prices, increasing asset values, things like that. The downward stroke really represents those who lost jobs, lost wages. They have, you know, maybe months worth of rent debt, overdue bills, maybe medical expenses, or even just unanticipated expenses that come up. And if you don't have that cushion, you can't take care of it. So we surveyed our clients, and recently more than half of them indicated that their financial situation has gotten worse during the pandemic. So this K-shaped recovery is really why we're going to see an ongoing need for food assistance at these historically high levels for months and years to come. It's not going to bounce back. You know, one of our clients was sharing with us about how it took them almost a decade to save $10,000, and they were going to use that for moving into a nicer apartment and putting some of it toward their daughter's college fund. And they went through that during the pandemic when they lost their jobs. And she says, it took us years to save it and months to spend it. And it just really like makes it kind of come alive to me that our clients are seeing just razor thin edges that they have to balance on every day. And that's why it's so incredible that this community has come together, like you were saying, Stan, and said, no, we don't want our community to be in that precarious state. And so for us to be able to day after day affirm that we'll be there for our clients is some of the best thing we can do. Just taking a look at more questions we may have gotten. One of the questions just came in live from the feed. What operational changes, this is a good one. What operational changes do you expect to see this calendar year and next? So what are we doing now as we're coming out of this?
Well, obviously this is going to be another year of change. It's probably not changing quite as fast as it did last year, but you know, one of the things we're doing is trying to introduce client choice back into what we're doing. And so I'm planning to do what I'm calling a hybrid model, where we may actually have part of the people going to a traditional pantry, picking their items off of the farmer's market style, and others could be doing a drive-through at the same time.
Wow.
And so I think that's going to happen. We're trying to decide how many people want to go back to farmer's market versus drive-throughs. So that's going to really change how we do things. Obviously, as people start going back to work, we've got to start adjusting the hours of these distributions because people now are working. Kids are back in school. So now we've got to start moving those distributions later in the days. You know, I'll tell you very quickly that Saturdays, when we began a year ago, we decided to start operating 6 days a week. And so we said, okay, we'll do Saturdays. And we had 4 drivers. Now we use every driver on Saturday.
Yeah.
Saturday is turned into a regular distribution day. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to happen the same thing with later hours, and people who are working all day still need to go to a pantry, because I'll tell you, the one thing I learned in Houston was that people's, it crosses all kinds of economic status. People really are living very close to the edge, paycheck to paycheck. They may have a little bit in the bank, but they don't have these big pots that they can go to when something happens.
Yeah.
And so if they get their hours cut or their wife is laid off or whatever is happening into their situation, it completely disrupts their whole life. And so they don't have any place to cut their budget except food.
Food. Yeah.
That's it. That's the only place.
And if you think about it, you know, we talk a lot at Second Harvest about, I was mentioned at the top of the call when we were talking about nutrition, we have a nutrition policy here, and it's based in this recognition that kind of long-term chronic stress is traumatic, and it manifests in lots of ways. And I just think about, like, when I've had a stressful day, how, oh, you know what, I'm going to want a glass of wine and some potato chips. And if your life is in a constant level of high stress, you're going to turn to food that's easier and provides that quick kind of comfort. And what we hear a lot from our clients is that they so appreciate that we provide a balance, that we do purchase milk and yogurt and eggs and chicken, so that way we can provide healthy, nutritious proteins along with, you know, 50% of what we distribute as fresh produce. Yeah. One of the things I wanted to ask you about is we're really talking a lot more now about kind of focusing some of our operations and distribution on having more culturally appropriate foods. Can you speak just a little bit more about that?
Right. You know, that was something we actually learned from when the government was helping us with boxes last year. They provided us 12 pounds of produce, but the 12 pounds of produce that was in the boxes, we provide 25 to 30 pounds. So we were adding to that. But when we would look at the 12 pounds of produce, it was produce that we don't normally get. It wasn't onions and potatoes and carrots.
Yeah.
It was things like cilantro and all of these different items. Mm-hmm. And so we've started asking the California Association of Food Banks, who does our sourcing frankly, for 75% of our produce. So mm-hmm. we asked them to start trying to be a little more culturally specific, and they are doing a very, very good job of that. And so our produce purchaser, that young lady, is able to talk to them, tell them the kinds of things we want them to find for us, and they're able to go out there and get it.
Yeah,
so that's one place we're doing it, is in the fresh arena.
That's a really cool thing, because it makes the kind of food bank experience more inclusive. We're running up to our half an hour mark, and I want to honor everybody's time who's spent their post lunch time with us. It's been so nice. I wondered, Stan, if you had any just closing comments for our donors and volunteers that have joined us today, and then I'll wrap us up.
You know, I think I mentioned it earlier. Really, I can't thank our volunteers and donors and really our staff enough. People really did stand up to help each other. And I think it's amazing. I really think it's amazing that we were able to do that. And we could not do this job every day without that kind of help. And for people just to open up and give it to us as a donation has been phenomenal to me. And I just want to take this time to thank them.
Thank you. I hope you all soak that up, because we really mean it. I was joking the other day, I was saying happy holidays to everybody, because here at Second Harvest, we start our holiday season. We start prepping for the holiday like in March, because the need goes up this time of year. And also so many people reach out to support us, which is just incredible. And this holiday season, we're talking about how community is the thing that really gives hope. And I started this kind of call at the beginning with a quote from Oscar, and I just kind of want to say it again. He said, when you donate, when you give to Second Harvest, you're not giving money, you're giving hope. So I just want to share that, we're really proud of how efficient we are. 95% of every contribution goes to client programs. And that is in part because of Stan and his amazing team making sure we're getting the food out every single day, 350 truckloads a week out into the community to get the food to the folks who find themselves in need of it. And I say that specifically. Right now, our clients find themselves in need, but they don't need to be defined by that need. They are not needy. They're just right now in a place that probably took an enormous amount of courage for them to come to Second Harvest and ask for help. And so I just want us all to think about what kind of perseverance and courage that takes and say thank you. We need your help with volunteering. We have a new warehouse on Brennan Street. You can look for it on our website when you sign up to volunteer. Also, of course, our standby Cypress, where we process our produce, and then all of our, over 900 distribution sites all over Silicon Valley. We need your help at those volunteer sites. And of course, if you donate, thank you. We couldn't do this work without you. Every dollar provides 2 meals. So someone invited you today to hear us chat about all this amazing stuff. Reach out to them with questions, and thanks again.